Okay, so today we are here with Kit. He is an F1 mini Bernedoodle, and he is in our turnkey program. So today we have a few things I wanted to go over and a few questions that you guys have asked that I wanted to touch on as well. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is our fundraiser that we do every single year. We do a few of them, but there's one that's specific to Utah, and that is the Epilepsy Foundation. So what we do there is every year we will donate the proceeds to a puppy to the Epilepsy Foundation in Utah, and they use that money for research and other things to people that have epilepsy. So it's a really good cause. And I've had people ask how they can get involved. Next year, I will do the live feed on Facebook again. And anyone that's on our list, they can bid on the puppy that we have for the gala. And if you are on live, you can either bid through there, or you can tell me the amount that you would go up to so that I can bid for you while we're at the event. So that's just something that we do every single year. If you have any more questions on it, then let me know. I will put a link to the website for the foundation in the description. So today I wanted to go over grooming a doodle. I saw a post on Facebook where people were saying that it was a myth that you didn't have to groom until your puppy was about 6 months old. And I guess that will all depend on how long you want your puppy's hair to be. So for us, we generally don't groom until they're 4 to 8 months old. It just depends on their hair type. If their hair grows really fast, we might have to groom them a little bit sooner. His hair is actually one of the fastest growing hair that I've seen. He's about 5 months old now. He has not been groomed yet. We have trimmed his eyes a little bit, but he hasn't had a full groom. We obviously brush him, trim his nails, and give him baths, but he hasn't had to have a full-on groom yet. One reason that you might have to groom your dog a little bit sooner is once they start to lose that puppy coat. So he just started to lose his puppy coat. You can see he has little flurries right here, and usually that will start around that 4 to 8 month mark. The only reason we do it at that point is because you can have where it falls out a little bit uneven. His is not falling out uneven. His looks really nice. I like the fluffy look. If you don't, you can really shave it or groom it at any point, but we do like to wait until they are around that 4 to 8 month mark. And if they're here for training, we will not give them a cut without asking their family, because a lot of people don't like to have their doodle cut. So we will just keep them like this and brush them and make sure that their coat is taken care of. That way they don't have to be groomed super short. They can just have a normal sanitary trim around the eyes, the genital area. And then if the paws are growing hair on them, his are getting quite long. So we will tomorrow morning be giving him a sanitary trim to just clean that up a little bit. So I wanted to talk about grooming at home, or things you can do before grooming. And one of those is nails, to trim the nails. So we have here, I hope you can see this. Here. So we trim the nails about every 2 weeks. We will start when the puppies are 2 weeks old. That way they are not hurting mom. And we have these here that have a stopper. That way they cannot go too deep and hurt your pup. Because if you go too deep, you can make them bleed. And sometimes when they're younger, you can't use that stopper because they will still bleed if you go that deep. But we will just barely get that end off that's sharp. That way, if they do jump up or put their paws on something, and even walking through like a hardwood floor, it's nice to have their nails trimmed so they don't ruin anything. And again, we'll do it every 2 weeks. When they're older, you can do it every 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how fast your puppy's nails grow. But we like to do it a little bit more often while they're young so that they can get used to it and they can get used to us holding up their paws like this. Good boy. You can see he's very good. We've done this several times with him. He knows that when you hold his paw up, he just holds it there. Good boy. So the next thing is brushing. Brushing is extremely important. This is something that needs to be done at least once a week, and we do it about 3 times a week. That is why we are able to wait so long between groomings, is because we do a good job at brushing. When you're brushing them, you don't necessarily have to put them on a grooming table or do a full-on brushing. We will just, if we're sitting around hanging out, then I will just take a brush and I'll go through his ears, make sure that there are no mats there. Good boy. The chest is an area that is easily matted. Underneath the collar is always a place that I see other people's dogs getting matted. We don't usually keep a collar on our dogs unless we are doing leash training or we're out away from home. But it's always good after you take off the leash to get a good brushing in there. And when you're brushing them, make sure that you are getting all the way to the skin. You can brush them and they might look like they're not matted, they might look good. And if you actually look down deep into the skin, then you will find that there are quite a few mats in there. A lot of people will take their dogs to a groomer and be upset when the groomer has to trim them down because of the mats. So it's important to make sure that when you're brushing, that you are getting all the way down to that skin to make sure that you are getting all the mats. And when we're doing the brushing when we're hanging out, we'll make sure and get the paws. Underneath the arms is another place that is easily matted. And if you do this enough, then your dog is not going to fight you. I have a lot of people say, oh, my dog hates being brushed, my dog hates being groomed. That is usually because they are not being brushed or groomed enough. So if your dog hates it, like absolutely hates it, I would start by having the brush by you and just getting them used to being around the brush, because I've heard of some people where they say the second that their dog sees a brush, they run. That means they need more socialization. This brush should not be scary. This should not be something that they're afraid of. They don't have to necessarily love it, but they do need to respect that when you have it, that you're going to be able to brush them out without them trying to bite your hands, without them trying to get away, without them tugging on wherever. Like if I pick up his hands, I don't want him to pull it out of my hands. And he's doing really good. When they're younger, they are going to do that. It takes practice and consistency, making sure that you are doing it enough to where they get the idea that when you are brushing them out, they need to sit there. Good boy. And try not to make it an unpleasant experience for them. If you do, they are going to be less likely to want to sit there. If you had someone brushing your hair and they were always constantly, if it was uncomfortable for you, you're not going to want to sit there for very long. So make it as comfortable as you can for them. You can even start with giving them a treat, or when you're brushing, have someone help you out and have them give your dog a treat while you're brushing them out. The main areas that we like to focus on when we're brushing is behind the ears, around the collar, underneath the arms, and then whatever side they tend to sit on. So if they sit on their left side, then that is the side that's going to get matted easily. So we'll just make sure we brush that out all the way anywhere that they are likely to sit. And this is something that maybe takes 3 to 5 minutes. It's not that long. So if you do it 3 to 5 minutes, if you're sitting there anyways, there's no reason not to. Again, I understand that sometimes you have a dog that doesn't love it, but you can get them to love it by making it a good experience for them. Good boy. And having a good boy. You're a good boy. So after, like with the brushing, I would make sure at least every other week that you are getting them, like we have a grooming table, so we will use a grooming table and we get them up there and make sure that we get every place on their body. And that will take about 15 minutes to do. If you're keeping up on it, it really doesn't, I mean, like I said, he has never had his hair shaved, and there is not one mat on his entire body. If you do a good job, it doesn't take very long, and you don't have to do it as often unless you have, like during this, in the spring, then we will do it a little bit more often because they are getting wet and sometimes muddy, and it's just more likely for them to get matted. So now that we've gone over the brushing, we're going to talk about bathing. So we usually bath our dogs a little bit more than the recommended amount. We are on a 5-acre little hobby farm, so we have chickens and horses, and you bet that these dogs will find every opportunity to get into poop or mud or just get dirty, even if they're not getting into that stuff. So we bath about once a week, and when we're bathing, we use a soothing shampoo. Ours just barely got out, so I don't have it to show here, but it is on our website, and we use that Burt's Bees oatmeal shampoo, and we will just sit it in their hair for a good amount of time to make sure that we are letting the hair soak in everything we can so that we're not drying out their hair. So we will do about every week. The recommended amount is every 4 weeks. If you are in an area that is not as dirty, then you can go that long and you won't have a smelly dog. I don't like my dogs to necessarily smell like a dog, but so we do it a little bit more often than the recommended amount. So now going on to grooming. So we recommend grooming every 4 to 8 weeks. And that is going to depend on what you want your puppy to look like. For this look, if you were within a few weeks, his hair is growing very fast. So if you want him to be fluffy, you may have to go a little bit more often. If you shave them down, they don't need it near as much. We will shave our dogs down when they're about a week away from whelping, and we'll just shave them completely down. That way, by the time they have their puppies, their hair is long enough that the puppies aren't going to injure them when they're eating, but it's also short enough that when the puppies are down here and getting all over mom, they're not going to make her get matted. So that's with our breeding dogs. We will go about every 8 weeks. With a dog with longer hair in the city, you'd probably want to do about every 4 weeks, depending on how long you want the hair to be. So someone asked a question. Well, I have a few questions to get to, but one of the questions that was asked was how to introduce your dog to a new puppy coming home. And the way that I would recommend doing that, well, first of all, and I've said this before, is make sure, like if you have a dog at home and they have any problems with aggression or resource guarding, I would work on that first. That is very important to work on that with your dog before you ever bring another puppy home. If you bring a puppy home with a dog that you like that is known to be aggressive toward puppies, then that is just, I mean, that's bad. That's bad all around anyways. Like don't do that. Make sure that you do have your dog that you currently have under control. So if you have a dog that is not aggressive and doesn't have any issues with resource guarding, and you have any worries at all that maybe the older dog might hurt the younger one or the younger one might terrorize the older one, then what I would do is I would start the introduction in a controlled area, like in your backyard. And when you let them meet, make sure that your pup can get away from the older dog. So if you have the puppy going and meeting your older dog, make sure they can go sniff, do what they need to do, and be able to get away from that so that they aren't getting fearful. And it is normal for a puppy to be fearful of any new older dog. They're big and it can be scary for them. If they are being scared and they're screaming or they're whining, I would have your older dog maybe lay down, get in a laying position, and just try to stay calm yourself. If you're over there holding your puppy and you're nervous, your dog is going to be able to feel that. And they're going to wonder, why are we nervous? Like, is there a reason we should be nervous? So it's important that you stay calm while you're doing the introduction and just be chill, act like it's any normal day. Don't really put too much into that interaction. Don't hold your older dog back unless they're hurting the puppy. Don't hold your puppy back, but do make sure that the puppy does have an area that they can go to if they are feeling threatened or if they are getting scared. Good boy. So with that being said, once your puppy and your dog has been introduced, you can put them in the house together, and most of the time they do really well. Again, if your dog already has issues, that is something you need to work on and get a trainer in your home before the introduction. And other than that, if your older dog is getting after your younger dog, allow that to happen. They need to be able to say, hey, knock it off. That's too much. You don't want to always be there having to correct that behavior. You want the older dog to set those boundaries as long as the older dog is communicating rather than being aggressive. Then you want to make sure that that older dog is setting those boundaries. And I will let my older dog go pretty far with a young pup. There's a difference between communication and aggression. Communicating is saying, hey, knock it off. If I have an older dog that is telling the younger dog to knock it off by a fast growl or a quick nip, then that is okay. As long as they are not hurting that younger dog in an aggressive way, like going out of their way to attack that dog, I will let that older dog do what it needs to do to say, these are the boundaries, don't go over them. A lot of people don't know this, but when you're raising a litter of puppies, mom does the same thing. That's the better the mom is, the more she will train each puppy how to behave with other dogs. And that's actually one of the important aspects of socialization, is that mom will train the puppies what is acceptable and what is not, and how hard they can bite before it actually hurts someone else. So it's important to allow your older dog to let that, to really communicate with the younger dog instead of getting frustrated to the point where they become aggressive. Allow them to communicate and say, no, that's not what is acceptable, and make sure that they have that room to do that. It might look like they are being mean to the puppy, but sometimes the puppy does need that to understand how to communicate with another dog. Good boy. So I had another question here, and that was, how do we get a puppy to be in a long distance stay? So we will be doing a video with both Kit and Jessie, and we will show that, and I will probably just upload it instead of doing live. I can't do live on my phone yet. You have to have 1,000 subscribers for that. So once I can do that, then I will do more live, actual live training sessions where we're outdoors and we can show a little bit more of how to train a certain behavior. But with a long distance stay, we start that in the house, and then we will go to our controlled smaller area outside, and then we'll move to our controlled larger area outside, and then we'll go out into an area that's a new area, and that's just, for example, there's a nice trail that's about an hour away from where we are. So the puppies get good socialization and riding in a vehicle, as well as when we get there, it's a pretty busy place. So we will see anywhere from 15 to 30 different dogs. And each dog that we see, I've noticed a lot of them are really good, but a lot of them little quirks that make it nice for us that we can train our dogs. Like we've had yesterday, we had where a few of the dogs would excessively bark at ours, and that was a really good experience for our dogs that were in training to understand that even if another dog is barking at them, they don't need to be fearful, and they can just look up to us to see what they need to do and to see what their next command is. So this one's Kit, but Jessie will be around a little bit over 30 pounds. So they're actually both 5 months old now. They are litter mates. And she is a little bit smaller. His paws are actually much larger than hers, but at this point, she's only a little bit smaller than he is, but she's really slowed down on her growth. So she should be in that size range, whereas he's going to probably be about 50, 55 pounds, full grown, with a very thick, stout build. And yeah, so Kit will be a little bit bigger than Jessie. And it's always interesting to see the difference, if there is any, between the temperament in the same litter. And they are very similar. They're both, we're going to be really sad when these guys go home. They're both really good at everything that we have asked them to do. They put everything into it. I wanted to talk a little bit about a post that's been going around, and it's about doodles, and it's kind of a controversial topic as far as doodles go. And the post was saying, that all doodles are hyperactive and they're this way or that way, and there's so many doodles that have so many bad behaviors. And as I was reading that, they put everything under a blanket statement, and it's really frustrating because yes, that might be true, but there's a reason for that as well. And to go over that, the thing is, when you think about a poodle, for example, like the first official purebred poodle, it was registered by the Kennel Club in England in 1874. Since then, they have been bred with a purpose. So they've been bred, and if the puppy and the litter was not exactly the way a breeder wanted them to be, whether that was color or temperament, they were culled. So you have this gene pool where puppies, if they're not up to par, they're going to be culled out of that gene pool. So you wouldn't ever see that. You were not going to see, if you had an aggressive dog back then, they're going to put that dog down. You would never see that. And again, with the Bernese. So the Bernese, they were also bred that way. So the first one to be registered in the American Kennel Club was in 1937. So that's, as far as breeds date back, that's fairly new. They were a breed over in Europe, but as far as America, that wasn't until 1937. And both the poodle and the Bernese, believe it or not, were actually bred using different breeds. And that's every single breed that you're going to find was bred using different breeds. And the reason you see more, and I wouldn't even say you see more, you see it in any popular breed. And you're going to see this in any popular breed, is there are breeders that are breeding every dog. And back when the breeds were first being established, you had people, if that dog did not fit the standard, they were put down. They were culled. And that is not what, in the Doodle breed, I do not believe that happens with any breeder I've heard of. So maybe you're going to see a dog that's a little bit hyperactive where you'd be like, oh, wow, you know, that dog is this way. Another huge thing that I think is overlooked is Doodles are probably the #1 breed for new owners or inexperienced owners. So when you have an inexperienced owner having a dog, and whether that dog has a tendency to have a problem, whether that dog is the best dog in the world, if you have an inexperienced owner, that can lead to a potential problem. They're well-meaning owners, but it still, you can have a problem that might be overlooked until that dog's an adult, and then it becomes a real problem. An easy example of that is to think about when you have a cute little puppy. Everyone's like, oh yeah, you know, cute puppy, they let them jump up on them. Now, when you have an 8-pound puppy, that might be fine. They're not going to hurt anybody. If you have a 30, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90-pound dog, that is a potential dangerous situation where if they jump on a child, they can knock them over, they can hit their head wrong, they can knock over someone that's elderly or just anybody in general. And if you don't know not to reward that behavior, then that can become a problem. So that is one of the biggest things I believe in any popular breed, and especially with the Doodle, is that we have so many people because they are great dogs. I mean, this dog, he is 5 months old and he is amazing. So I can see, you know, you have these dogs that are so great, and so everybody wants one. And first time owners, they see these dogs and they're like, wow, you know, that's a really good dog. And so that's the dog they end up picking. They want that breed. So it's really important to make sure that when you are looking at a dog or a puppy to bring home, that you work closely with your breeder. And one reason I really don't like when people pick out a puppy when they're a week old is because you cannot see anything about temperament. We wait at least until they're about 5 weeks old, where we can do the Volhard testing, and we can see from day one kind of how each puppy has interacted with litter mates, with mom, with us, and get a better idea on their energy level. That way, like if we see a problem, we had one, I had one about 5 years ago, and he was one of the most stubborn puppies I've ever seen. So I did not allow him to go to a first-time family, and he went to a family that had dealt with other like husky breeds and shepherd breeds. And when they got him, they said he wasn't as as stubborn as I had said, but they loved him, and he was actually very trainable. And when I say like a Bernedoodle is stubborn, they generally aren't going to be in that realm of stubbornness as, say, a shepherd dog or a husky breed. They still, I mean, they'll look at you sometimes and be like, oh, I don't want to do that. So there are certain commands that we consider like commands that they have to do regardless. If they don't want to do them, there are commands they have to do them. Like come, no matter what. If I tell my dog to come, they're going to come to me. If I tell my dog to stay, once they've learned this, obviously, as a young puppy, you're not going to be as firm. You'll be firm enough to get the idea across and to get the point across and to make sure that you are teaching them in a correct manner, but you're not going to be as firm as you would for like an older dog. Like right now, though, like he's 5 months old. If he were to get up, I would just make him get back on his place. And he does really well with that. You're the best boy. So, but to go over that again, like the biggest reason, like you'll see that people will say, oh, you know, Doodle's this and Doodle's that, but it's not, the Doodles aren't the problem. The problem is a lot, he's a good boy. So my thing says that we are having a bad connection. So you'll see on social media, people will say doodles are a certain way. Doodles are not the problem. The problem is when a breed becomes popular, they are overbred. And if you're buying from a breeder that you can't communicate with and try to get a dog that will fit your family, then that can also become a problem. So we are actually up on our half hour. Kit, you want to say bye? So we will let you guys go, and we will be back next Tuesday. If you would like to be notified, then subscribe. And we will see you next week. Say goodbye. He's asleep. Look at that. He's completely asleep. What you gotta say bye? Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you guys. Thank you, Gary.